Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. Let me just introduce you to my complicated life at the moment. When you watch this, it will either be late February or early March. I'm filming it in January, but I can't show it to you yet because it features some of my new stamps and stencils that, yes, won't be fully released until February. However, at the moment, I'm not only sample making, but getting ready for the International Trade Fair, Craft Trade Fair in Frankfurt in early February. And there need to be some samples to go on the walls for the PaperArtsy stand. I can't leave my beautiful samples on the wall in Frankfurt when I leave a day early, because I can only be there a short time. So I need to make some doubles that can go on the wall and stay on the wall, and I can bring these back and show them to you in the live launch. My head is spinning, so don't worry if you didn't follow all of that. In any case, what I need to do is make some doubles. I very rarely remake, so this is a strange thing for me. I make, that's the process for me. The making is the joy. Repeat making generally doesn't bring me that much joy, but in making some of these doubles, extra journeys have happened. So I thought what I would do is invite you along for the double making with these. Yeah, it's a bit of a new look around here. These figures, and they're in some ways it's not new to me because I have doodled figures like these in the margins of my theatre scripts for years, decades, back when I was an actor, then as a voice coach, sitting in rehearsals when there was nothing going on that I needed to pay attention to. Yeah, little doodled, always women, I think, mostly always women, would turn up in the margins. So in some ways, these are very, very familiar to me. But yeah, they're a new look here at Words and Pictures. They combine beautifully with all the botanicals, and by now, hopefully, you'll have seen some of those samples. If not, I'll link to the little launch release videos and all of that sort of thing in the description below so that you can check it out. But I need to make something at least similar to these. So it's some of the salty watercolour backgrounds that we made, last year, I'm going to say. And yeah, I'm just going to use those to create something new. I think I quite like a combination of the blue at the top and the blue at the bottom. And I quite like, I'll link to the salty watercolour video as well. I do like having all three of them, I think, or maybe I want that one as a sort of balancing act in the middle. Maybe it's something like that, down, up. Yeah, good. So I don't really remember entirely what I did. When I get new products to play with, when I get my new designs that arrive, I just try to launch in without too much thought. I try to let them take me on journeys and tell me stories. So I'm sort of looking at these and I can spot in there, can you see the gloss of that outline? So that tells me that was embossed. I think with clear embossing powder. I think probably I stamped in maybe Cobalt. I don't know. The whole, if you look at all the samples, there's a sort of colour story, a wintry colour story going on. I think we might have her, yeah, sort of with the sky looming over her. There's a wintry colour story across all the samples. There are winter blues and turquoises, and then of course, because some of the stamps are berries, there are berry reds and berry purples. So blues and purples and turquoises. So these are some of the turquoise ones, but yeah, that hint of blue I think is nice. So that is just going to, when I melt the embossing powder, bring her into focus in a really nice way. And I might stamp all three, add the powder, and then heat them all in one go, because I think that's going to be the simplest to do. Bit wary of leaving that embossing powder open and ready to be knocked over, but I'll try to be organised. If you could have seen the state of this craft table yesterday, when I'm mid-sample making, it is insanely chaotic here. Just bonkers. Because as I say, I'm trying to let the process just run. I'm trying to let one idea lead to the next without too much judgment, without too much overthinking. Just letting things strike me and then try them out. Not to get caught and stuck and think, oh, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. I have to say, one of my favourite things has been, there's a little bit of paper fluff on there which will impact the stamping if it's still there when I stamp. I'm just trying to get it, it's caught in the curls. Can't imagine what inspired me to do curly girls. No idea. If you've watched the launch video, you will know that I'm being somewhat facetious about that. I quite like that salty pattern, so I'm going to keep that up there, and I'm going to put her down here. Is she in the middle? Not quite. She's off center. So as I say, these don't have to be exactly the same, and they won't be exactly the same because the backgrounds aren't the same. The backgrounds are deliciously random, as salty watercolors tend to be. So I'll just heat one of these on camera so that you can see that magic moment as the clear embossing powder, which is now obscuring the image, suddenly starts to melt and the image becomes extra clear, extra available, extra present. So I'll try to keep it on camera and keep the heat tool out of the way, although that means I'm not quite going at the angle it would like to go at to fully heat it. There we go. Did you see her neck go just then? I'm going to turn it round so I don't want to burn my fingers. So here comes her hair into focus, and then down the rest of the body. There it is. And there she is. Grand. So I'm going to heat emboss the other two. See the difference? See how that brings her into focus compared to while the powder is still unmelted. Grand. Let's melt some more and I'll be right back. There we are. So all three done like that. One tiny word of warning about if you are embossing, particularly if you're embossing on fairly absorbent paper, which watercolour paper can be, particularly cheap watercolour paper. It is possible to overheat your embossing powder so that it sort of starts to sink back into the paper. So don't go on forever and ever. Once you've seen that melting, get it done. Now, one of the joys for me about this playtime has been the matching stencils and masks that come with these women, so that you can mask this off and do all this stenciling and stamping, background stenciling and stamping, knowing it's not going to hit those. You don't have to have those stencils. It's perfectly possible to work around your stamped image without having to have the stencils there as well. So the next step is some of these sort of bubbly delightful bubbly rings is what we've got here, and I think I'm going to just ink some of those on in maybe some Salvaged Patina. I can't remember if that's the colour I used before. So here is her hair. If I wanted to use the little mask, where is she? There she is. I can pop her over the top there, hold her in place, and that's going to stop any of that inking happening around her hair there. So if I'm inking that up, la la la. However, if you don't have the masks, you could just choose to position this bit of stencil a little bit further away from her and it's never going to hit her. Or you just notice the hair is there and don't ink over it. I'm going to put a couple more up here, I think. So just getting that through there. If you've got the little tiny blending tool, if you've watched the launch video, you'll already have heard my sort of feeling about trying to aim for light and lightness with these stamps, a sense of bubbly effervescence, of things floating away, of, yeah, hope and possibility of light delight in 2026. So that's just layering in some little bubbly moments. Lots of different sizes of these. If you keep your stencils in their plastic packets, you do just have to be a little bit careful, because I wanted as much ring and as little joining as possible. So you can see there are bits where it will flop around or it'll get caught on the packaging. So just a little word of warning to just watch out for your stencils. But in trying to get that sort of fragile bubble effect, there had to be a little bit of compromise in terms of a slight fragility in this one. But as long as you know about it, you can be ready and you can protect it. So that's my little word of warning for these. There we go. Let's have this little collection of big bubbles, little bubbles, and then there's a deliberate design coordination between the bubbles here and the bubbles here. These are actually created with various pen lids and the ends of things, but I wanted some bubbliness going on there as well. Maybe one last little bit sort of behind her head. There we go. Let's have that one. Good, good, good. So that's one layer, and then I think I may have stamped in Uncharted Mariner with these bubbles. And again, you can choose to use the mask if you've got it, or you can just make sure you don't stamp over the top of the figure. I do quite like trying to get some just behind her arm there. So just with my fingertip, I can get that into place. Let's have these heading off up here, because I think that was quite a good look. Maybe coming down that side. That's nice. Couple in there. And maybe layering over the top of the stenciled ones, I think is a really lovely effect, because you get the large ones and the small ones just playing games there. These of course are great for sort of journaling. Lovely on journal pages, these kinds of simple mixed media shaped images. So I'm thrilled to have them to play with, to just explore a little bit over the next weeks and months. That's all quite nice. I think that's doing a job. Maybe a little bit down there. And secondary stampings, of course, as well, because some of these bubbles are fading into the background. That's all very simple but very delicious. And of course, you don't need my stamps for this process. You can use what you've got in your stash and just choose to build up layers of stamping, layers of stenciling. I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been Uncharted Mariner to paint the dresses as well. So that's just a little spot of Uncharted Mariner on the mat. I might have a little spritz of water at one side of it. So now I've got the option of quite a watery mix at the top and a much stronger mix down the bottom. And yeah, I'm just going to gently put in some colour on the dress, just to help her stand out from the background. And then to create that lovely shading, I'm just going to go back in and build those layers of colour. Oops. As you can see, not terribly worried about causing chaos. And just let that dress get a little bit of form and shading. A little under there, a little under there. There we go. Nice. And then here, same thing. So just a gentle wash to start with from maybe the watery end, and then just inserting a bit more shading in these sort of shawls and wraps, and giving a bit more presence to that. And obviously these women are available to be painted and not painted. Add colour, don't add colour. I quite like them as line sketches, and some of the samples have done that with them. One reason I love having the masks is it means I can stamp lots of botanicals behind them. So having them standing in meadows and yeah, with moonlight behind them, all that kind of thing. So do take a look at the other samples because, as I say, this is a somewhat new look. And yeah, it's fun to explore. And I quite like, on these samples I've left them, I don't know, what would you call it, skin free. They're green women for here. I've got pink women, white women, brown women, yellow women, purple women, all kinds of women. I think the hair on these is grey. I think I was sort of thinking, oh well, you know, they can also be any age you like. But when I put the grey on against the green of the background, it actually just gave me a sort of, I don't know, light grey brunette. But I like it. I like it a lot because it's, you know me and grey, always a colour I love. And I was about to say it makes me happy, but that's not quite what it is. Grey has a melancholy about it, and that's a mood, that's a mode that I respond to. There's something profound about acknowledging the melancholy in the world. I seem to have completely missed her other sleeve. So let's get some colour down there. And this is very loose. This is impressionistic. This is not, you know, creating deep art for the ages. This is fun, playful, just creating that sense of lightness and bubbliness from the curly hair to the stenciled bubbles to the stamped bubbles, and of course there's going to be a bit of spatter in a minute. White spatter, necessarily. Oh yes, words. There need to be some words. Let's spatter first. I might spatter with a bit of this left over. Don't think I did that before, but let's just, might as well add a layer. Use up that ink. Okay. So a touch of light-heartedness today. I rather like her shadowy face. I was just wondering about whether to do a little bit of white to just soften that, to make her stand out more. And one could, it's very easy. I mean, let's show you. So the teensiest bit of white paint, very watery wash, just going over the top of that watercolour background to just highlight it a little bit. You could also go darker, of course you could. But given the other two have got slightly paler faces, I just want her to tone in with them, really. There we go. Yeah, it's just lifting her away from the background a little bit. She's still green. She's a green woman, and I like her for it. Oh, actually, I don't know why I'm putting the lid back on that. I want that paint. Here's my spatter one. So this snowflake is almost empty, so it's the one I keep that I will just dip a brush directly into. And I don't mind having spatter on the dresses as well. If I wanted to, I could mask it if I've got the masks and stencils. But I rather like having that on the, in fact, I'm going to put some more over these two that happen to be here. There we go. What I will try and do is try and avoid having too much spatter right on the face. And where it's gone there, I'm just going to lift it up. There we go. If you're somebody that enjoys drawing faces, you've got lots of space here to play. I've been having a little experiment with just putting some features on, and that's also quite fun. Gives you a place to experiment with getting those features in place. Right, I'm going to give these a quick dry because the next thing is to do a little bit of white word embossing. And as we all know, if you emboss while there's other wet stuff around, the embossing powder is going to cling to bits you don't want it to cling to. So I'm going to give these a good blast with a heat gun and be right back. These samples, you're getting a real glimpse behind the sample making process here, are really about highlighting this stencil as opposed to these women. There are other samples for the women with lots of botanicals, as I mentioned. So for the words on these, I picked from all three sets. So from the two berry and branch sets, I've got a word, and I picked the three B's. So I've got beauty, believe, and bright. And in some ways that's very appropriate because for this release, I'm thinking of them as bees. So there are berries, there are branches, And there are bodies, these being the bodies. Although I then in the end decided that we would call that one figures rather than bodies. But I maybe I should have stuck to my guns. Berries, branches and bodies in this release. So let's have Believe. Because there's opaque white embossing powder going on this, it doesn't matter what colour I stamp it in. For the most part, I tend to go for something relatively pale if I'm going for white, just in case for some reason there's not enough powder or not enough of whatever I want on there. So the bottom of the B there doesn't seem to have taken enough. Grand. So I might again stamp all three and then heat all three, or maybe we stamp and heat and then, yeah, you don't need to watch all three of them happen. So I can see there's a little bit, I think, is that white spatter got picked up some powder? So just with a little brush, I'm just going to knock that out next to the E there. Maybe it didn't, maybe it was just a white dotted paint. So again, just hitting that with the heat to get myself the glossy white embossing. Look at that, just shift and change. And there it is. And I don't mind that that's really subtle. I like that the words are subtle. They're kind of not the point. They're part of the background. Grand. So beauty and bright. And then we'll pretty much be done. The other final element is just a little white doodled frame border, which I've done with my Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleedproof white ink and my dip pen. Obviously, if you've got a gel pen or a Posca pen, you can use that. I have both found those to be relatively unreliable, but also I just really enjoy using the tool of the dip pen. To me, it's sort of like crafty time travel, using an implement that was the way for centuries of writing ink to paper. I don't actually need to be filling up as often as I am because there's plenty of flow going on at the moment. So yeah, just a little frame to draw the eye inward, and what I'm doing as I get to the woman herself is I'm not taking the frame across the top of her, I'm letting it sort of pass behind her, as it were. So stopping the frame, and that again just pushes her into the foreground. She's emerging from the frame, from the piece, coming out to see us, as it were. So just a little touch. You could of course take the frame across the top of her, absolutely nothing wrong with that. Running out of ink on the mat now. There is just a touch of water in this ink to get it to flow even more fluidly, and I now need to just pick some up. There we go, there it is. So just creating that little frame draws the eye inward, lets us come towards all that bubbly lightness, and of course being white, it has that light capturing quality built in as well. Just rinse out the dip pen, make sure there's nothing caught in the flow areas, and then of course I can use up what's left on the mat here just for a quick little extra spatter. Oh, there's almost nothing. So these, as you can see, are just mounted onto some white card. That's so that when they go up on the wall in the PaperArtsy booth, they will have some impact. They just need a bit of mounting. So I will do the same with these, mount them onto some watercolor card, but that's kind of it. A simple layering process with stamps and stencils, a way to use those watercolor backgrounds that we created several months back, I suspect. By the time you watch this, it'll definitely be several months. And I hope you've enjoyed that little gentle bit of light, bubbly playtime. Thanks so much for watching. As always, if you've enjoyed this, do give me a thumbs up. Leave any comments or questions down below. I will link those relevant videos and the launch videos. So take a look at the other things I've been making. Take a look at the berries that I shared probably last week. Again, I don't know. I'm filming in January. I haven't scheduled any of this yet for the YouTube channel. But I hope you've also enjoyed that little glimpse into the sample making process, that little bit of chat about how I go about these things. Thanks so much for your company, and happy crafting all.